Annals of American crime, few cases have captured the public imagination quite like that of Erik and Lyle Menendez. Their names are synonymous with a shocking act that shattered the facade of privilege in Beverly Hills. In 1989, the brothers murdered their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, in their own home. It was a crime that seemed inexplicable, a brutal act committed by sons against their wealthy, seemingly successful parents. Decades later, the case continues to resonate, fueled by new perspectives and ongoing legal developments. Recently, news broke that Erik Menendez's next parole hearing has been postponed. Originally anticipated sooner, the hearing is now scheduled for August 2025. This delay has once again thrust the infamous case into the spotlight. It reignites a complex and enduring debate. At its heart lies the tension between justice, punishment, and the possibility of rehabilitation. Can individuals convicted of such heinous crimes ever truly be rehabilitated? Should the severity of the original offense forever outweigh evidence of change? These are the questions that resurface with every development in the Menendez saga. The postponement of the parole hearing forces us to confront these difficult issues once more. It's a case that challenges our understanding of family, motive, and the purpose of the justice system itself. Erik and Lyle Menendez grew up in a world of immense wealth and expectation. Their father, Jose Menendez, was a high-powered entertainment executive. Their mother, Kitty Menendez, was a former beauty queen and socialite. From the outside, they appeared to be the perfect affluent family. But beneath the surface, according to the defense, lay a dark reality. On the night of August 20, 1989, Jose and Kitty Menendez were shot and killed in the living room of their Beverly Hills mansion. Jose was shot multiple times with a shotgun at close range. Kitty was also shot multiple times as she reportedly tried to flee. The scene was gruesome and chaotic. Erik and Lyle were the ones who called 911. Their frantic call, reporting that someone had murdered their parents, became instantly infamous. Initially, police suspected mafia involvement or a business dispute. The brothers' seemingly distraught demeanor initially deflected suspicion. However, their subsequent behavior began to raise red flags. They reportedly went on lavish spending sprees in the weeks following the murders. This stark contrast to their apparent grief fueled suspicion among investigators. The case took a dramatic turn months later. Erik confessed to a psychologist, Dr. L. Jerome Oziel, about his and Lyle's involvement. Oziel's mistress later reported the confession to the authorities. This led to the arrests of Erik and Lyle Menendez in 1990. What followed were two highly publicized trials. The first trial, beginning in 1993, was a media circus. It was one of the first trials to be extensively televised, captivating the nation. The defense, led by Leslie Abramson for Erik and Jill Lansing for Lyle, presented a narrative of abuse. They claimed the brothers had suffered years of severe sexual, emotional, and physical abuse at the hands of their parents. They argued the murders were not premeditated acts of greed but rather desperate acts of self-preservation. The prosecution, led by Marcia Clark in the first trial, painted a different picture. The motive was purely financial. They contended the brothers killed their parents to inherit their multi-million-dollar estate. Key evidence included the shotgun purchases made by the brothers just days before the murders. The brothers' spending after the murders was also highlighted by the prosecution. The first trial resulted in hung juries for both brothers. Juries were unable to reach a unanimous verdict, reportedly split between murder and manslaughter based on the abuse claims. A second trial commenced in 1995. This time, the trials were severed, with separate juries for Erik and Lyle. However, the core arguments remained largely the same. The defense again presented the abuse narrative. The prosecution again focused on premeditation and financial gain. The outcome of the second trial was different. Both Erik and Lyle Menendez were found guilty of first-degree murder. Juries rejected the defense's argument that the killings were justified or manslaughter. Following the conviction, the sentencing phase began. The prosecution sought the death penalty. However, the juries ultimately sentenced both brothers to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This sentence meant they were expected to spend the rest of their lives behind bars. It was a definitive legal conclusion to a case that had gripped the nation. The Menendez murders sent shockwaves through the affluent community of Beverly Hills. Such a violent crime seemed unimaginable in that setting. It shattered the illusion of safety and privilege. The impact on the extended families of Jose and Kitty Menendez was profound and devastating. They lost loved ones in a horrific manner. They also had to grapple with the fact that the perpetrators were their own nephews and cousins. Public reaction to the case was intensely divided from the very beginning. On one side was outrage and condemnation. Many saw the brothers as cold-blooded killers motivated by greed. The image of wealthy young men murdering their parents for money fueled public anger. Their initial behavior after the murders, particularly the spending, solidified this view for many. On the other side, a degree of sympathy emerged, particularly during and after the first trial. The defense's presentation of the alleged abuse resonated with some. The idea that these young men might have been driven to such an extreme act by years of suffering was a powerful narrative. This sharp division in public opinion persists even today. Was it a calculated, premeditated double homicide? Or was it a desperate, albeit horrific, reaction to unbearable circumstances? This question remains central to how people view the Menendez brothers. Psychological insights played a significant role in the trials and continue to inform the debate. Defense psychologists testified about the alleged long-term trauma and its effects on the brothers' mental state. They argued that the abuse created a state of fear and desperation. The prosecution countered with their own experts. The credibility of the abuse claims and the psychological assessments. They suggested the brothers were manipulative and calculating. The defense's claims of sexual and emotional abuse became the cornerstone of their case. They argued that the parents, particularly Jose, were tyrannical and abusive. They alleged a pattern of control, manipulation, and sexual molestation. These claims were vehemently denied by the prosecution and some family members. The truth of these allegations remains a point of contention for many. The public was left to weigh the horrific nature of the crime against the disturbing allegations of abuse. This moral and psychological complexity is a key reason the case continues to fascinate and divide. It forces a confrontation with difficult questions about victimhood, perpetration, and the cycle of violence. Decades have passed since the Menendez brothers were sentenced to life without parole. However, legal developments have opened potential avenues for review. California law has evolved regarding sentencing, particularly for juvenile offenders and those sentenced under older statutes. Erik Menendez, who was 21 at the time of the crime, has become eligible for potential parole consideration under certain circumstances related to sentencing reform. Lyle Menendez, who was 24, is not currently eligible under the same provisions. Erik's eligibility stems from changes in California law concerning youthful offenders and the possibility of resentencing or parole review after serving a significant amount of time. His case is complex due to the nature of the crime and the original sentence. News recently emerged that Erik Menendez's next scheduled parole hearing has been postponed. The hearing was reportedly anticipated sooner than the new date. The new date for Erik's parole consideration is now set for August 2025. This postponement has legal significance. It means Erik will remain incarcerated for at least another 2 years before his case is formally reviewed by the parole board. The reasons for the postponement are not always publicly detailed but can involve scheduling issues, case complexity, or the need for further review of records. For Erik Menendez, this delay carries significant emotional weight. It means continued uncertainty and waiting for a chance at freedom he has sought for years. For the victims' families and the public, it means the case remains active and unresolved in terms of its final outcome. Postponement prompts questions about the criteria for parole eligibility in such high-profile, severe cases. Even when technically eligible under new laws, the path to parole is far from guaranteed. Parole boards consider numerous factors. These include the nature and severity of the original crime. They also evaluate the inmate's behavior and conduct while incarcerated. Evidence of rehabilitation, remorse, participation in programs, and psychological evaluations are crucial. Public safety is the paramount concern for parole boards. In high-profile cases like this, public opinion and the potential impact of release are also often implicitly or explicitly considered. The postponement means the extensive review process required for such a case will continue. It allows more time for documentation, evaluations, and preparation for the hearing itself. It also extends the period of anticipation and debate surrounding Erik's potential release. The legal system's process for reviewing life sentences is under scrutiny in cases like this. Balancing the finality of the original sentence with evolving views on punishment and rehabilitation is a challenge. The delay ensures that this particular chapter of the Menendez saga will not close anytime soon. The Menendez case, particularly with the prospect of parole, crystallizes a fundamental conflict within the justice system. This conflict is the tension between the demands of justice and punishment for past crimes and the potential for rehabilitation and future reintegration into society. Arguments supporting potential release for Erik Menendez often center on the concept of rehabilitation. Proponents point to his behavior during his decades in prison. Reports suggest he has been a model inmate. He has reportedly participated in educational programs and therapy. He has also reportedly expressed remorse for the murders. Some argue that after serving over 30 years and demonstrating significant personal change, he has paid his debt to society. They might emphasize the alleged abuse as a mitigating factor, suggesting his actions, while horrific, stemmed from a damaged past. The focus shifts from the irreversible crime to the individual's capacity for change and redemption. Conversely, arguments for continued imprisonment are rooted in the severity and nature of the original crime. Killing one's parents is considered one of the most heinous acts imaginable. The premeditated nature of the murders, as found by the jury, is a significant factor. Those who oppose parole emphasize the finality of the victims' deaths. They argue that a life sentence without parole was the just punishment for such a crime. They may view claims of rehabilitation with skepticism, or argue that no amount of rehabilitation can outweigh the gravity of the offense. For them, justice means ensuring the punishment fits the crime, and in this case, that means permanent incarceration. Expert opinions often weigh heavily in this debate. Legal analysts discuss the nuances of sentencing laws, parole eligibility criteria, and the role of the parole board. They can explain how factors like the original crime, prison record, and public safety are legally assessed. Psychologists offer insights into the potential for change, the long-term effects of trauma, and the assessment of future risk. Their evaluations of Erik's current psychological state and remorse are critical components of the parole process. The debate is not merely legal or psychological, it is deeply moral and philosophical. It asks what we believe the purpose of imprisonment truly is. Is it solely punishment and incapacitation? Or does it also include the possibility of transformation and eventual return to society? The Menendez case forces society to confront these difficult questions in a very public forum. It highlights the challenge of balancing accountability for past actions with the potential for human change over time. The outcome of the parole process will reflect how the system, and perhaps society, weighs these competing principles. The postponement of Erik Menendez's parole hearing to August 2025 means the future remains uncertain. Speculation about the potential outcome is inevitable. Will the parole board be swayed by evidence of rehabilitation and the passage of time? Or will the horrific nature of the original crime and the life without parole sentence prove insurmountable obstacles? The decision will be closely watched and intensely debated, regardless of the outcome. The Menendez case has left an indelible mark on American true crime culture. It has been the subject of countless books, documentaries, and television programs. It continues to be analyzed and discussed by armchair detectives and legal scholars alike. The case also holds significance for legal precedent. It had issues surrounding televised trials and the impact of media on the justice system. It also raised complex questions about the admissibility of evidence related to abuse and the psychological defense. The Menendez Brothers story remains one of the most controversial and compelling cases in American history. It is a case steeped in tragedy, privilege, violence, and enduring questions about motive and responsibility. The complexity of justice and rehabilitation is perhaps the most lasting legacy of the case. It challenges simplistic notions of good and evil. It forces a consideration of the multifaceted factors that can contribute to criminal behavior. The postponement of the parole hearing ensures that this conversation will continue. It provides more time for reflection and debate. It keeps the focus on the difficult questions surrounding punishment, forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption. The Menendez case, even decades later, retains its power to provoke thought and challenge our understanding of crime, consequence, and the human capacity for both destruction and change.